What's happening, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where today we're going to talk about Brian Burns and picking up Brian Burns in free agency. This is a move that I think the Colts should seriously consider, right? And this is whether or not they're going to trade Kwity Paye, right? We've talked about that, trading Kwity Paye. Whether or not that happens, getting Brian Burns, I think, is a move that could take us over the top. And I understand, like, when you go look at Brian Burns and look at his stats, it might not seem that way when you pair him up next to Quiddy's. Like Quiddy's, yes, Quiddy's getting better every single year. But when you look at Brian Burns here and look at his sack totals, he's played for 5 seasons. He has 46 total sacks. Okay, his rookie year, he ended up with 7.5. His second and third year, he ended up with 9 sacks. Then in 2022, he had his best season of his career where he ended up with 63 tackles and 12.5 sacks in that 2022 season, right? And then in 2023, he ends up with 50 tackles, has 8 sacks. And the difference between Brian Burns and Kwity Paye is that you're going to get consistent pressure with Brian Burns. That's something that Brian Burns, like, you take the two into account, right? Yes, Kwity Paye is better in the run game. Kwity Paye's more sound in the run game. He makes more plays in the run game. But that's when you have Brian Burns, who gets after the quarterback much more consistently. Yes, the sack numbers aren't as high as they could be, but that's because quarterbacks know Brian Burns is coming. I have to get this thing out of my hand. So I think if the Colts wanted to go ahead and keep Kwity Paye and go ahead keep him for the season instead of trading him away, right? So you keep him, and then he's a rotation piece while you have Brian Burns starting. And I think that would, we've talked so much about over the past couple of years, especially getting defensive end depth. We need that one-star guy, which could be Brian Burns, by getting that depth, right? Then you think Brian Burns on one side. You have Samson Ebicom on the other, who is the Colts' best pass rusher this past year. Okay, then you have DeForest Buckner in the middle, assuming that the Colts keep him, and then whatever the Colts do, whether it's Grover Stewart or somebody else in the middle, we're going to be able to create mismatches all over the place. And when you really go in and look at it, right, when I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, is this something like, is Brian Burns going to move on from the Panthers, right? Or is he going to look to max out his contract there and keep trying to build something there now that they have Bryce Young? And in my opinion, like, when you really look at the situation, the Panthers are changing coaches year by year by year. Coaches not making it through the season, interns not getting jobs, new coach next year, right? Like, it's been crazy in Carolina. And we saw with the Colts, like, people stopped wanting to come to the Colts and guys wanted to start leaving the Colts because it was, every single year, new quarterback, can't figure out a quarterback. And when you can't have consistent success with the quarterback, it's hard to have consistent success as a team. So guys didn't want to come here. Now that we have Anthony Richardson, that's going to start to change. But when you look at the Panthers, like, Bryce Young as exciting of a figure as Anthony Richardson is at quarterback? Is he going to entice people to stay there or to play there? Brian Burns could be looking at this situation saying, our owner is volatile. And so I don't know if I want to move forward in this organization, even though they took a chance on me and drafted me and whatever the situation is. And this is a situation where I can't blame him if he wanted to leave the Panthers, right? You're looking at his situation with it being so unstable, with him being at that midpoint of his career where he might be in his prime right now and might be ready for the big contract right now, but he only has a couple years left, especially at his position. You got to understand, he's going to want to go somewhere where he can win. Does he believe that's going to be Carolina? And does he think that that could be Anthony Richardson in the Colts under Shane Steichen? Okay, that's going to be the question. Are the Colts going to be willing to use some of their cap money on a defensive end? So that's going to be the big conversation going forward, is will they spend big money on a defensive end? If they do, who will it be? And in my opinion, from everything that I've looked at so far, I feel like Brian Burns could be that guy for us. I think he could be the game-changing defensive end that we've been talking about as a franchise and as a fan base. So going forward, I think this is what I'm going to be looking at. This is what I'm going to be hoping that the Colts are going to be putting their money towards in free agency. There are other things, of course, that we're going to talk about, other options. We've already talked about players from the Colts that could be traded, players from the Colts that are going to be free agents, that we are going to bring back, that we're not going to bring back. And now we're at the part where we're going to start looking forward, and I'm going to start looking at tape from the college guys, and we're going to talk about different positions we could go after, different specific guys that we could go after. I'm going to put a mock draft together. So we have a lot of content coming. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you get notified when those videos come out. And of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.